almost. Now we are live. We are absolutely positively 100% live. Everybody out there can hear us. And Todd has now joined us for episode number 440, as I have to spend some time fixing the scene. So everybody else out there say hello.
Heyo! I'm really excited that there's going to be a lost episode of about 3.5 minutes that is so devoid of content that it's not even worth calling a lost episode, but Shira, I think, exported it anyways.
Yep.
Way to go, Sean.
I did it.
You are a real trooper. So
proud of himself too.
Yep.
I did it, guys.
Always am.
Hey, so
You can't get me down.
the other intro stuff that we needed to cover that took forever. Adam might have to leave for a little bit, so you might have a slightly better podcast while he takes care of some IT shit.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
He's bringing that fire.
This is what happens when you turn 28, boys. 28, you start getting real sassy. Let's go.
28, you're a real man now, huh?
Yep. Yeah, that's what. If you guys saw me at my new pictures from last weekend at the music festival, you would know how much of an adult I am, because I definitely wasn't wearing anything ridiculous, and it's not my picture in Slack right now, so you can go check it.
Aha! Oh man, I almost had this whole thing set up with everybody's photo up there. Todd, you can see Todd's face.
Yeah, we did it.
Look at that.
Look at that, guys. Todd, I'd say that microphone is not 6 inches from your mouth.
Well, it just depends how close I'm getting. I was kind of leaning back.
I say that's true in any scenario. It depends on how close you're leaning to it.
Yeah, let me get it in the. There you go. Now you can see. It's like 6 inches.
It's a little bit further than 6 inches, buddy. I think we need to work on your math skills.
Hey, cool. What about
sick,
League of Legends? How about League of Legends, the thing we podcast about occasionally?
I'm stalling because I'm trying to fix the scene, and I was hoping somebody else would stall for me. But
I
just jump into it.
Mitch's picture, and I gotta say, I don't know why. Like, I feel like I need to print this and get it framed.
Sean,
sure, man.
Sean,
Yes.
hey. How's Darkspell going?
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to record maybe tomorrow. Man, I should really fucking talk.
Yeah, you should know. Yeah,
I should
talk it up
know.
a little bit.
See, all right. Do you like Dungeons and Dragons? Do you want to listen to another T-Force Dungeons and Dragons show or watch it on YouTube? Check out Darkspell, which is a game DM'd by Montganorum. How do you even pronounce his name?
Montganorum. That's right.
All right, there we go.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
But I've called him Mont for like 4 years.
And that's
probably
fine.
3 years. I'm just lying now. But yeah, it's DM'd by Mott and myself, Blake, and the other Sean from LCS Rundown is
Stuffy?
Yeah. We're all playing, and it's great. And I get to do fun barbarian things.
that's great. Well, let's talk about barbarians that are not in League of Legends. Because
You really just want to talk about League of Legends, don't you? Like,
well, we've also blown through like 5 minutes of this shit, so I think it's time that we talk about some League of Legends. So, as you guys, I'm sure, have seen over the last few weeks, we've been talking nothing but patch 7.9, or mid-season patch, and we've decided to move away from that for this week, so everybody can now rejoice, as there will be no more 7.9 discussion going forward. Now,
Ever
again?
Well, yeah, probably. Oh, that's not the right intro. That's not the right overlay. I just didn't do that, guys.
Hey, so what are we going to talk about this episode then? Hey, there's a Google Doc. Let me look at this. How to pick a support. That's okay. I guess that's the topic, because that's the next thing down here. So this says, and I'm just going to read it straight from it because, good God, we have no structure today. Assuming you're not like a burgeoning brand one trick, how should you go about picking a support champion? And we have a couple little bullet points here, but I didn't know if we just want to open it up. I mean, I used to be a support player, and my thought for a long time, like I used to play Thresh Leona almost exclusively, and I opened that up eventually, as I probably should do with my mid lane champion pool, to kind of fit whatever we needed, which isn't necessarily to say like tanky or not tanky, but also like factoring in the amount of CC that the team has, if there's no engage that your team has if you're picking late in there. But that's also what back when it was pretty much pick order meant what role you wanted. So with the dynamic cube being around, that's not necessarily the case anymore. Support's not always your last pick.
This topic stems from the common low MMR notion or problem that supports will run into where the team will pick nothing but squishy damage type champions, and then everybody will start saying, "Oh my God, we need a tank," and they will expect you to pick Leona or Braum. And it's kind of problematic thinking if you're going about it just from that standpoint, because you're bandaging this notion of a tank with the lowest gold income player on the team.
I was gonna say, if your only tank is the support, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a pretty, everybody has their own sets of tier lists, and you can find success rate and all that type of information available online. And generally speaking, you can pick Thresh or Lulu anytime, and you're going to be good. But if you're really taking a look at your team comp, that's more what I was going for with this conversation. I tend to try to double down on certain things that the team is already doing well. Like if we have Engage, picking a support that has really good secondary engage is a really good thing that you can do. Generally speaking, crowd control, you can never have enough of it. That's not fundamentally true, but crowd control is a good thing to have. Otherwise, we just, if you were watching any of the MSI games today, they were running a bunch of shields. With Ivern and everything, just doubling down on all of those extra things instead of trying to bandage something that your team is lacking. Double down on what your team is already doing well.
I was gonna say, a hyper carry. If your team has a hyper carry and you pick somebody to prop that up, I mean, everybody wants to pick Lulu right now, but you could go a Lulu Ivern. Just, we're going to shield the important person forever and let them do what they're supposed to do and carry the shit out of games.
Unless you are playing with Todd Marine Revenge Castle, in which case you always pick pick a support that will speed him up, because all he needs to do is just get to the enemy team, and then he'll just do his job. Time. Yeah, just the one time.
Yeah, I found that playing with Todd usually means that once he gets that kill, he usually drops his keyboard, disconnects from the game, and says, "You guys got the rest of this." And it's been not as effective as you might think as a keyboard drop would go. But no, I was thinking we've talked. All right, I've talked a little bit about the emergence of hyper carries this mid season, and that's obviously coming up. Not maybe completely true, but the shields comps becoming popular is helping that out a lot, because they benefit in that scenario. Keeping somebody alive is very effective. And tanks is kind of a weird thing to me, because for about half of Season 7, we had the lethality was huge in the game. Tanks were not nearly as... They weren't doing a whole lot, because it was Kha'Zix jumps in, murders your backline, and cool, that was a fun team fight that ended immediately. Tanks just didn't do anything. It was you had to match that level of aggression, and that's kind of how the game was going for a little bit. Now that the game's, I think, slowed down somewhat, tanks can fit back into a meta where they can do damage over a longer team fight, but they have to stay alive, hence the tanks coming back into it. I know that doesn't really answer the scenario where, this is the only tank on our team, but it's at least showing that you might have a front line again, as opposed to earlier in the season where it was play mages, play as much damage as possible, hard CC.
Some of the tanks are having some difficulty in top lane right now. With the changes to Sunfire Cape, it's gotten the damage disparity between a bruiser and a tank has become more obvious. So that Bombing Cinder was kind of covering tanks' first backs. As long as they could get that on their first back, they would be fine. They would be safe to trade. But now they're not really hitting that same spike. And since they're shoving the minions a lot harder, the passive is stronger against minions now than it was. Tanks are kind of unsafe top lane. I think being able to play a tank support is probably really valuable right now, even if it's not, you know what I mean? We're kind of talking about getting forced onto a support, but I think tank supports are still really valuable at the moment.
I'm not trying to argue that tank supports are fundamentally bad. It's more the case of if your team is Talon top, Master Yi, pick a mage mid, and then any AD carry and everything, and you are saying that your team needs a tank. Support was the wrong spot to try to fill that with.
You don't want to force that to be the only one. Is you're gonna want your
like
jungle
if
or
your
your top
support
or
is
something like
is
that.
really your only crowd control and your only like source of durability, you're gonna run into a lot of trouble because they're just they don't have the gold income to get the items you need to be that durable, and they also have to dedicate at least one inventory slot to an item that has some durability stats on it, but compared to any other tank item, it's just it pales in comparison because it's really serving a different function.
Probably,
Yeah, if you're gonna
probably the only
Go.
champion that is decent at doing any of this is Taric. I mean, obviously Braum's counter engage, Alistar does really good, but Taric actually does really well into those comps with a lot of assassins because he can make everybody invulnerable.
Well, he does both. He provides that tank role and he props people up, and that's
right.
Right, and
like,
you don't
it's
even really
separate.
build him like a tank.
So, in the sense of the word, if your team is calling for you to pick a tank, one, your team needs to learn to play. They need to play differently. I think everybody in the average MMR, which what is it, Silver 5 right now is 50% of the player base. So, like, if you are average MMR, somewhere around Silver or whatever, maybe even Gold, and somebody calls for you to play a tank, I think that there has to be an easier way to say, I'm going to play this, and then your team has to learn how to play around that. Because the game isn't just all about engage. It's not all about we're going to 5-man team fight and turn this around. We see a lot of professional comps, for example. They will pick Rumble and Ivern with an Ashe arrow, and Ashe is pretty much their only engage if they're using it. But they're just doing a lot of counter engaging and a lot of swip pushing and a lot of moving around the map, and your team has to be able to do that. So if you are shoehorned, not necessarily shoehorned into support, but shoehorned into the role of wanting to do some kind of engage, pick something that props your team up, and think about how a team fight may go if you pick that champion. So I'm picking Alistar, and I've got a team full of assassins. Am I doing my job? Am I doing enough CC with only having a WQ to play Alistar here, or is Taric better to let them engage on me, and then I pop my ultimate and make everybody invulnerable so they can do all their damage, right?
Right,
Like,
right. With
think it
Alistar,
all through.
you have your combo, or you have all three of your abilities and everything. What are you going to do once those abilities are on cooldown? And that's kind of the problem you run into with a lot of the support tanks and everything, is once those crowd control abilities are on cooldown, they don't have the damage to really make themselves threatening. So that's what you need to be looking at for your team and everything. What are you going to do? Well, like what can your team do otherwise while your abilities are on cooldown?
Yeah, I think what I was thinking about in that last little bit was I don't want to make this into if there's, like you were saying, if there's two tanks, it works really well. But I think it's if you're the last pick and you're support and you're saying we need a tank, I would look at the team comp and say, are we a team fighting comp? Because if so, it is, I think, a lot more likely that a tank will be an effective person. What you're saying with that Alistar, if you're going to get CC on a bunch of people, and maybe twice in a fight, that could be very effective. But as you said earlier with Talon, if Talon's running up to somebody and killing them, your CC might not even do anything to start that fight or to even help. Like, and after that point, you're doing nothing, or your team's rushed past you to like jump to the fight, and you're like, well, I'm back here being really ineffective. I think it's, you have to look at your comp with like just no tunnel vision and actually see what you're up against too, to make sure it'll fit, as opposed to just, yeah, as you're saying, shoehorning yourself into, I gotta play Braum because he's a tank. Shit.
But just glancing over some of these top lane win rates, you're not lying. The tanks are struggling, except for the obviously overpowered one,
which is
Sejuani. Sejuani.
She being played top? I know.
She's being played wherever people feel like playing her because she's crushing stuff. But otherwise, it's like Pantheon, Yasuo, Aatrox, Jarvan, but he's not really played tanky.
Yeah, the bruisers and the assassins are really good right now, top lane.
Yeah, and if bruisers get a lot more, like the really conventional bruisers start getting a lot more play out of top and everything, tanks out of support become a lot more valuable because they do the one thing that the bruisers need them to do, just hold somebody down long enough for the bruisers to get into the fight so that the enemy can't get away. But if Pantheon is your top laner and everything, the tank's not really gonna, he'll do that job on his own,
Yeah, whereas like we're talking Dom's favorite Lulu, or like Janna can like either ult that person who jumps in and help them get out, and now you've got a 5v4. Same thing with Janna, if they try to collapse on that person who jumps in, you shield them, knock them away with your ultimate, and you've reset a fight that you might have already won. even if you didn't get that person out, and now it's a 5v4. I think that could be really effective.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know if we really answered that super great.
It doesn't have a fundamental answer to it. I'm really just trying to like encourage our listeners to ignore anybody saying we need a tank and look at what your team comp is doing well and figure out how you can best facilitate that.
Oh, but holy shit, if your team has no hard CC, please for the love of God get some. Like, do not pick I don't know. Like so many of the supports have hard CC now that I can't even think of one that doesn't at this point. But just make sure that if you like Karma, like if you're a team that has no lockup at all and there's like a Vayne, don't play Karma. That's not going to go super great.
Yeah, Soraka's probably not the best choice in that situation.
Well, there's a lot of times where that happens, where you get to the last pick and you're trying to, shoehorn the tank roll into the sport, where you kind of have to put look at these idioms. You have to put all your eggs in one basket and pick Karma, right? Like, you are now deciding that we are going to win 2 of our 3 lanes at least, and we have to win them, and then we have to continue our snowball, and one fuck up, we're dead. That happens a lot. So if you can't play if you can't play Tarek, Janna, Maokai, Thresh, whatever, I don't know, just throwing shit out here. Play something that you're comfortable on and just make it work for you, because you've already done everything. Your team has already set you up for failure by not drafting a team comp that works well together. So you just kind of have to hope that your team is going to win and that your team can do what they need to do to close that game out faster. Now, this leads me into another point that I wanted to mention that's not in the document. Is that,
can we do that?
Yes, we
can. We do that?
Just something quickly. Remember how we've always told people not to surrender because the game can go one way or the other. And I saw something the other day where somebody said that don't surrender, force the enemy team to close the game out, because a lot of the average player base doesn't know how to close the game out even when they're ahead by 20 kills. So that's another reason not to surrender.
That's fair. I mean, we at T-Force have a really, really good ability to not take towers ever during a game, so it takes us much longer once we get a lead to actually push it down.
Again, unless Todd's playing top lane, because he just
unless that happens.
Yes.
They usually get first tower, and then we just don't get any more for a little while.
No, that's what like I said. You drop your keyboard and walk away.
That's because you're too busy sitting in bushes, just waiting.
Dude, if the strategy didn't work, I wouldn't do it. Like, people walk in this, man.
The common catchphrase for Todd is, "Hey, do you guys see that insert champion name?"
Yep. Then they die.
And then about 5 seconds passes.
Right. He's like, "Well, I guess he's not coming here." But yeah, I thought that was just like a nice little tidbit there. It's just another reason not to surrender. Force the enemy team to close the game out. Always, even if you're knocking on two of your your inner turrets and all 3 inhibitors down, force the enemy team to close it out, because there's been too many times where enemy teams just dick around and don't try to engage, or they flash their taunts and whatever it may be, and then you end up coming back slowly over time. It's just, you have to keep in mind that you have to start playing. You have to play. You have to keep everything close to your chest and play really well throughout those, though, because you can't get confident yourself, as Sean and I have seen in previous games.
If you play
don't have
enough
confidence
games,
yourself.
If you play enough games, eventually you'll play that game where you have all your turrets down and your Nexus is like 2 hits from dead, and they're too busy trying to kill people respawning in the fountain to end the game, and then you ace them somehow, and then you come back and win.
That shit drives me crazy every time somebody, like, if the game is semi-close and people are trying to farm kills on the opposite side of the Nexus, I'm that asshole that's just sitting there hitting the Nexus like, fuck you guys.
Yeah, me
fuck
too.
you.
I'm
if we
also that
lose because
asshole.
of this, I hate everyone.
Sean says that, and then he plays T-Force games where he is the guy on the other side of the Nexus fucking around.
I am always the dude attacking the Nexus. I rarely ever sit
Actually,
on the opposite
Punch
side.
right now is the guy who's trying to fire kills.
Yeah, Punch is playing so much more outrageous than I do when he plays Kled. Like, if he's not playing Kled, he plays like Punch. But when he plays Kled, he's the riskiest player I've ever seen. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
I wish you could dial that back a little bit, but then move that same attitude over to. We need to tell like, hey, punch. You're playing Fiora. Play Fiora like you were playing Kled.
Yeah.
That assumes that you are comfortable on the champion.
Or Camille or whoever. I mean, he's played some Fiora, but yeah.
You're just assuming that he's so comfortable on the champion that it brings out another side of him. I don't want to see the school girl teacher Fiora Punchinello cosplay.
Yeah, I would see that.
You're
more
of a man than I, Dom.
Yeah, I don't know what I would see that says to me. I would actively like search him out to go see that. So I would say the opposite.
We would buy a ticket to that show.
Yeah. We live in the future. It would not be hard for us to see that.
Yeah, true.
If we really wanted to.
Well, let's change something and talk about changing roles because I'm done with this conversation.
So Adam, get into changing roles since you've changed roles more than anyone in the history of the show.
I think Mitch is actually the better candidate for this because Mitch.
You've changed more over the length of the show than anyone that's.
No. He's changed roles. He's changed roles more.
That's what I'm saying. No.
It's not changed.
Adam has gone from like ADC to top lane to jungle back to top lane.
You forgot support. There was some support in there.
Yeah, you did. All right, yeah, you did. All right, sorry. All right, so you went from
I
ADC to top to support, back to top to jungle for a bit,
and top.
Then back to ADC.
No, top.
Okay. Well, regardless, like you've run the gamut of positions. Mitch is just the most recent convert to a different lane that we have.
Yeah, so if anyone's been following any of the games or pretty much us talking about it on the podcast, I switched from mostly support maining with a little bit of top to mid lane this season, a little bit before the season, I think, too. And it's been an interesting change because after playing support for a couple seasons, it's weird to have gold at any sort of large amount ever. It's also kind of a weird feeling to actually carry games. Whereas, I mean, you could carry games as support, and I'm never gonna like say that you can't. It just takes different forms, of course. And the ability to 1v1 people is a thing that doesn't really happen in support very often. But it's been a really interesting, really kind of eye-opening because something I picked up Ahri. Ahri's been by far the main champion I've played out of mid lane with like a smattering of other ones, like a Nivea or Aurelion Sol or Victor. But one thing I guess I don't know what we want to talk about with this. Is it just like the changing of roles or like what benefits you get from trying out new roles?
This primarily goes along with Lancifer, who we had on a few weeks back. He was having a problem out of top lane. He's been hard stuck in the bottom of silver for a while, but he really likes playing Kennen. And I suggested that he move over to mid lane with Kennen because it does, in solo queue, does work out pretty well that you can move over there. Plus, if you get stuck as a Phil and marksman, you can always play Kennen marksman as well if you're comfortable enough with the champion.
And play him support.
You really can. I think he told me he was going to try to play it every role and just have a backup for a jungler just in case. And I told him just to dodge if he doesn't get his role. But the whole point of this is he took Kennen mid lane, and he messages me a week later, and he's on a 9 win streak with Kennen mid lane from changing to there.
So I found this is something that I found outside of League, but in League and in a lot of things. And this is not going to be a knock on Lancifer's future performance. I found that when you switch something that you're already kind of proficient at, you switch up something fundamental about it, you end up like having a string of success for a little while, and then eventually it kind of regresses to the norm. But in League, and I think this is actually going to help me out a lot, getting to play mid lane has given me something I haven't done before in terms of, in a lot of ways, of managing mana and skills more so than normal. Like I had played top, support, and AD carry, which never really have. You don't have to really manage your mana pools that much because either you're on island on top or you're at AD carry. Support a little bit, but like you had to trade with just one person and manage both of those resources pretty effectively. But it also opened me up to the idea of roaming, which I have really enjoyed on Ahri because it's very easy to do. Like you have an ability that lets you go faster just inherently with your Q. But it gives you a broader game sense which I think is, in my opinion, like one of the two ways that you improve in the game, which is either you would increase your game knowledge or you increase your mechanical skill. And that, I think that's just an easy way to increase game sense, is to play other roles and get a feel for how those other roles play, but also what those roles do. Not just because it means when I go play that role, I can do stuff with it, but if I'm now playing bot lane, I might know more about when a mid laner might roam, especially like an enemy one, or I might know like when the jungler is going to show up mid and can ping that and talk to my team. And I think like it opens up your horizons a little bit more than you might think if you are just stuck in the mentality of I have to main this role for an entire season and see how well I do. I think it actually really helps. Even though technically I have just been maining this role the entire season, it's something that I hadn't done till now, and I had been playing a bunch of other things till then.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so like I agree with like the developing a broader perspective about the game. I think that's a good thing that you can take away from changing roles, or like a reason you could consider like trying another role out. I'm not gonna say like changing necessarily. I think another thing you should consider is when you learn more about yourself as a player, you kind of figure out like what you're good at and what you're maybe need to work on. And there are different roles that accentuate different parts of the game. So if you know what you're good at, you could maybe change to a role that exemplifies those strengths. So like if you have good map awareness and you make good engagements and you have like a good sense of like how the pace of the game should be, you'd probably do better as a support player who's kind of controlling like the pace of the game with vision and and pinging and just setting your team up, as opposed to like trying to be that mid lane player if you're not as mechanically solid.
If you find yourself ending games regularly and saying, I could have carried if I had been, if I hadn't been the marksman or if I hadn't been the support or whatever it is, that might be a sign that it's time for you to look at another role. If you're finding yourself more frustrated with the role that you're playing than actually enjoying it, it might be time for you to look at another position. I tried moving into jungle earlier this year, mostly because looking at the game objectively, I felt like the jungler has a lot of influence over the game, and especially early on, and every game has an early game, not every game has a late game, but the jungler has so much influence during the early game, and I felt like there was some overlap with skill sets there, and I tried to move into that, but ultimately I just didn't like it, and I liked supporting, and that's why I quit the transition and just stuck with support, because I genuinely like playing support. Win or lose, yeah, it's frustrating to lose, but like I support's the role that I want to play. And so if you find yourself saying, if I had just been somebody else, or if I had been playing a different position, or maybe if I hadn't been the support, I feel like I can't carry. If any of those are the attitudes you have, it might be time for you to look at another position. And yes, it's going to mean starting a few rungs lower, and it's going to mean learning a different set of skills, but ultimately you'll be a happier player, and happier players tend to be more successful.
I think you have to go in. You have to go in there when changing roles and figure out what you want out of the game right now. Are you just changing roles because you're fed up and you're losing LP out of the top lane, and now you're just trying to find a shake-up to try to find a way to gain LP? Or are you trying to get a better sense of the game and have a better understanding of how to play your champion against other matchups or whatever it may be? I know that when I was climbing last season the Diamond, I started out by playing just random shit. When I very first started, I was Silver 1 and finding success, but I soon realized by playing that low that okay, let me go back. I hadn't played in Silver or low Gold 5 for like 2 or 3 seasons up until that point. So I can tell you how much I knew just based on what people have told me, what I've seen, but I hadn't ever experienced it. And what I noticed was that nobody knew how to engage team fights. And team fights were just kind of like up in the air and random willy-nilly, and if somebody engaged because they got lucky, essentially. And, of course, those people know what they're doing, but... And that's when I decided, well, I'm going to stop playing jungle and whatever and support. I'm going to start playing Malphite out of the top lane into every single matchup, no matter what I'm doing, because I know when to engage a team fight. And that's all I had to do, was just be there as Malphite and press R, and my team followed up. And so if you're that kind of same type of player that goes, I know how to engage team fights, maybe you just find a champion. That's all you do. You don't worry about winning your lane. All you do is worry about being at the right place at the right time and pressing your R Amumu, Malphite, Nautilus, Leona,
Fiddlesticks.
I think this is kind of funny because I hadn't thought about the connection between like Ari and my old support Thresh as much. Not necessarily because they do the same things, but because they have that pick potential, as well as like being a Thresh isn't exactly safe because he jumps in the middle of the fight, but Ari was the safe person that I could play that I already kind of knew how to get picks and how to find corners to grab people from with her charm. I think that might be kind of why I fell into her pretty quickly, just because it made sense from my old place. That was my playstyle as a support, was disrupt the shit out of people, and that's pretty much it. That was all I did as support. So,
well, you didn't like being in lane.
Yeah, also that. I didn't really like being in lane.
Like that was the thing I noticed, like watching your guys' Vantage replays, or like you just didn't want to be in lane, and there are parts of the game where you just have to be. And like I kept thinking Mitch should be a mid laner because then he has so much agency over himself instead of having to worry about this 2v2 dynamic.
Yeah, and Adam was the one I had to support, so
I like supporting Adam. I don't have a problem supporting Adam.
I think I was playing pretty well at that time. Thank you very much.
I don't think you were playing at a diamond level at that point.
Excuse me, but I made diamond halfway through Vantage.
I don't remember.
And then I sat there and just let it ride.
I did the same thing except with platinum, and then I decayed out of it. Boo.
And now you don't play the game.
I have been playing it more on occasional weeks, but I've been dying this week. So
he's playing it more when he's drunk at 11:30 on a Saturday night until he passes out.
Even Todd, who has been predisposed for like 3 months, has played the game more than you have.
Yeah, I have like 10 games almost.
I guess there's got to be more to it than changing roles is just have. I think it's all about what you're looking for out of the game and what you want to do, and then when you actually move into whatever role you decide to do. I think it's a good idea to roll into like Discord or Summoner School or something and say, hey, here's my OPGG. I'm not finding success. What can I do better? Or if I switch roles, do you think I should switch here? And people will help you, right? But
a friend of mine even had some success with that. Yeah.
Who is that?
A friend of mine even had some success with that on the League of Legends message board and everything. He got some high MMR players to spectate a couple of his games. This was years ago. But they were like, yeah, based on the way you're playing the game, you're playing all the wrong champions, and you need to look at these types of people. And then all of a sudden, like, the game started to click a little bit more for him.
Yeah, if you are gonna make that conscious decision to change roles, like, think about it a little bit. Like, if you want to post and ask for somebody else's advice, do it. If you want to look at the champions you could play and figure out one that fits your playstyle, do that first instead of just like hopping into the game and saying, "Oh, I'm doing this now. Ranked other lane pick, go." Like it'll benefit you more, and you'll probably be less frustrated if you actually think about it for like even 1 minute would be helpful. Like 5 minutes would be great. Like you could do this at work or at school and be like, who would fit my playstyle, and just use that time constructively. I'm not saying you shouldn't be using your school time to do, I don't know, school things, but
so I probably should admit that the very first time I ever played Jhin was in a ranked game, and it was just because I saw the champion and went, I'm going to try him. And then he clicked, and it worked out.
Your diamond.
All the way up there. But I do think it might be a bad idea that if you pick a champion for you to just go all ham into that champion. Let's say you're sitting at work and you got some extra time and you're like, today I want to play Garen. So you go and listen to Todd's Champion Select podcast because you donated to the network. And then you pull up Todd's guide that's on LOL King. And then you go and you watch some videos that he has on YouTube, and you have all these ideas, and you go and play the champion, and you realize, oh shit, I just wasted a ton of time trying to figure out how to play this champion, and I don't really like it. I think it's better off to jump in a couple normals with that champion once or twice, read the abilities, of course, try to figure them out, get an idea for it, and then after you're like, I kind of get a feel for this champion, I feel like I could play it well, then jump in there and start looking for guides and whatnot, but instead of trying to figure out the best way to play the champion right off the bat, figure out if you like it or not. the deafening silence is everybody agreeing with me for what it's worth. I get all the stares.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to experiment. It's always been good to experiment.
That's what college is for.
That's what every life is an experiment. Get out there.
Thanks, Sean.
Play
Thanks,
some
Professor
stuff.
Sean.
No problem, man.
I think we should answer some listener questions, though. We've had a couple in here for a while now. Yes, no, maybe
All
so,
right.
whatever. I guess I'm going.
Yeah,
for
let's
it.
do it.
Yeah,
You're the
No
host,
one is
man. You're
fucking
calling the
talking
shots.
this evening. Do I have to walk across here, give everybody a shot, and slap you all across the face and say "fucking work"?
I
Yes.
would say A,
Yeah.
we had to carry you through the beginning of this episode.
you were-
with
you
routine
were
stuff. And B,
intermittently
we
gone.
talked through most of the first couple things. So excuse me, I'm just giving you your time back.
I don't want my time. I want my co-host to pick up the slack that I am leaving out for them. Mitch, that's an old played out.
Oh!
It's old and played out at this point.
It's still good. It's still good.
Find a new shtick. 500 games low and not climbing, or low gold and not climbing. Writes, I searched for guides and podcasts on how to climb and what makes the difference between a gold, plat, diamond player. However, I can't seem to find anything really in depth. Can you guys talk about this a bit? To put this into context, I came from playing StarCraft, and within that community, I was able to find all sorts of information on what is necessary to be better at the game. I eventually climbed to Grandmaster because of this. So that's what he wants to know. What's the difference?
I could comment on this because I played StarCraft at a master's level as well, and I think I know familiar with some of the contrasting differences. So like StarCraft is a really mathematical game, and a lot of it is just executing things at the right time of the game. And you kind of develop these patterns, kind of like in chess, where like when you open up the game in chess, you're given a set of follow-up moves to that. And StarCraft is like, that's kind of what StarCraft is. Like, you open up the game a certain way, and then there's these specific branching paths that you can go down as a result of how you opened the game. But League is a little bit more dynamic because you have 10 players, and you have such a wide roster of characters. The things that separate players in different tiers aren't always going to be the same thing. Some players are really mechanically strong and they can climb off of those skills alone, but eventually they get to a point where winning lane isn't enough anymore because now they're losing in the mid game and the late game because like their objective understanding is weak or just their positioning on the map maybe is getting punished more severely as you move into higher tiers.
Where they're chasing kills when they don't need to.
Yes, exactly. So like it's kind of a broad thing, but as a general trend, the higher skilled you are, the better you are at farming, and the less often you die. Those are like the two big statistics that significantly improve across all of the ranks.
Right.
I never played much StarCraft at all. Is as far as the competitive side of that game goes, is it pretty much 1v1 across the board, or do you get into like
pretty much at the high level, just 1v1, yeah.
So that then that touches on the point, like there are 9 other people in every single game for whom you cannot force your will on. And I've talked about this I don't know how many different times over my tenure on this show, but like you can only control your own actions and decision making. You might know that one thing is the right call every 100% of the time, but that doesn't mean the rest of your team is going to follow that call because they are going to think that a different action is the right call 100% of the time. So part of it is just figuring out how to work with everybody, but like again, you have to remember you can't control everybody else in the game. Like you just can't.
I've been spending some time watching some low elo streams recently, bronze and silver players, and I'll give Mr. 500 wins in gold and not climbing. I will give you an example of one thing that you can work on that changes the difference between a bronze and a platinum player, for example, and this goes all from in between. It's how you attack move and how you position in lane. The thing that I notice with a lot of bronze players is, one, they don't use their auto attacks when they're trading. Like a support, for example, will not use their auto attacks in the trade. They'll just spam their abilities and hope it's they won't weave anything in. Or they will attack, wait until the missile lands, and then move to attack when their attack timer has already come back up. Now, moving that's kind of like the auto animation canceling thing. You throw your attack out, your missile launches, and you're moving in between that missile being launched or just after the missile being launched. A lot of people will throw, wait, and then reel up and throw again and won't move in between. So if you're looking for ways to improve, pay attention to how you use your auto attacks and where you move before you throw your next auto attack.
And I guess let's clarify that further. If you animation cancel properly, you actually end up casting your next auto attack faster. If you do it improperly and basically by waiting for the damage to hit, you end up taking longer between auto attacks, and it would have been more efficient for you to just stand there and continue auto attacking. Now, don't do that because then you're going to get hit by skill shots and that type of shit. But that's the point there. That's why it's so important to understand the difference of when you should be canceling your attack animation.
I want to add on to this real quick. So the guy mentions that he's searching for guides and podcasts, but he can't find anything that's really in depth. I think what you guys are talking about just now with the auto attacks are great, really in-depth tips, but only for certain classes of characters.
Sure.
To an extent. So I think if he's to answer his question on if he's looking for a guide, probably the best thing you can do is once you find characters you really like, to look into character guides, because the most in-depth tips seem to be character specific to this game. Once you learn the basic tricks, you learn how to ward and you learn how to do this and that, all the really fine nuances are on the characters themselves.
I sent Anna linked something earlier with Renekton and it was essentially Riven level animation canceling that he can do with Tiamat, where he's canceling W with Q or canceling Q with Tiamat to get an extra attack in there and stuff. Shit like that, where if you're learning the main net champion, you need to know how to do those full on combos. Caitlyn, you know how to do EQ auto attack, right? Little things like that. But those are all, I think that's a really good point, Todd, is that you need to go find those character specific YouTube VODs or whatever they may be, because everything else, if you read on Summoner School, it's just basically hey, work on your mentality, be nice, work on your CS, and take some objectives.
I mean, that was one of the big benefits of the old school solo mid website, and that every single guide that was for most of the high rated guides on there were exactly that. I mean, it was it gave many of them gave matchup specific tips, and I don't know. Do they still keep update, or has that moved over to Law King?
They've changed it to where, because I actually had 4 guides on there that had more than 20 million at the end of its lifespan, and it's pretty much cheap imitations of that by high profile names.
Gotcha.
So they'll hire the 2 people on their LCS team to throw something together in 15 minutes.
So something that I wanted to run off of with the attack move and the Jesus, throat is dying, is kind of getting a bit of extra efficiency out of your time. This is something that I can talk to with Ari real quick. Is very simple, and something that you're never going to be able to see is how much quicker you can get back to lane, and that's pretty much true for every champion. Renekton, if you E once or twice in your way back to lane, you don't really lose anything for that. You save maybe a half second or a second. And Ari throwing out her Q to get movement speed as you're going back to lane, throwing it behind you so it takes longer to get back. You'll get a little bit of extra time. And like I said, while there's no way to quantify how much in a game that'll ever really help you, it's if you think about it, whenever you're saving time, you're either getting back to minions quicker, you're getting to that gank quicker, you're speeding yourself up in a way that no one else can really stop you from doing, and just helps you, assuming that you're not just burning all your mana or using your E at the your Renekton E right before a fight, and you're well, crap, I didn't save it with enough time to get it back for this fight that I'm running to. But you can find little things to position yourself better that aren't just in laning. I was thinking the other one I was thinking was jungle. A lot of people will start while the camp is about to die, start attack moving to pull it in the direction that you're going to go after that camp. So you're already 2 to 3 steps closer to your next camp or your next objective. You save just minuscule amounts of time when you think about it, but it's going to improve your efficiency overall, even if you never see a stat that tells you that.
I like doing the drive-by help.
Oh yeah, support. You should do that all the time.
Yeah, Sean's doing Krugs and I'm Karma or something. I'll just swing by, toss a Q in there, throw a shield on him, and then keep going on my merry way.
I appreciate it every single time, unless you kill them, and then I hate you.
I never kill them. I've never taken one of your cams.
Yeah, but that just like increases. Again, you're never going to see a stat that says I kept my jungler's health up a bit more from doing a bit of damage as I walked by. But if your mana's not going to suffer for it, or you're not losing, like if you're not blowing an ultimate to help them do it, your cooldown's probably going to be back up by the time you would need it. Obviously, make sure that if you're literally running into a fight, don't waste something really important. But
it can also pay for itself later. Your jungler is going to show up for a gank with more health. Your jungler is going to show up in a lane for a gank faster than he or she otherwise was going to be able to. Your jungler is going to remember that you did that one little act of kindness and gank your lane instead of someone else's. Like, these are all just little things, but they can have a really big impact in over the course of a game.
Yeah, that's something that you also pick up from, like Todd was saying, those champion-specific guides or videos, where if you see somebody doing that, you say, hey, they seem to be doing this a lot. What is it? And then you realize, oh, it's because they get a move speed buff while this happens. Like, it was like Rengar Q for a little bit. I think they might have taken away that little jump, but they'd just be throwing out Rengar Qs because it got them some extra distance. But there's, like, so many champs have that, and it's, I think, very important to learn how to like maximize your time efficiency and then get more out of that, even if you're not going to see anything that ever tells you. That's like the support assist thing that I wanted to see forever. Like the stat that says you saved somebody in a fight, like your shield was enough to, like, without that shield they would have died kind of stat. But we talked about that. I don't want to get into that again because that was a long discussion.
Can you approach this game the same way you would approach StarCraft? Again, I never played StarCraft.
It's sort of, I mean, at the base level, yeah. I mean, there are games where there's like a meta game and there's mechanical, input required, and at a certain point, the familiarity of just playing will propel your skill level to a certain point, but they're not like the same game.
Learning the, like, not strategies that will transfer, but like the ability to learn strategies that are effective for that particular game. If you can do it at one, you should be able to do it at the other. Like the ability to think out the match as you process it should transfer. If you can do it in one game, you should be able to do it in the other. Do the actual skills themselves transfer, as in, like, does your mechanical skills really transfer? Not as much, because the games are different.
I like the chess comparison because I used to play chess a bunch and actually played it this weekend. It's like, but it would be like if each player brought their own different type of king that did different stuff in a game, and then also you had a 5-on-5 game, which would be also a crazy. If you ever played Bug House, you get 2-on-2, which is crazy variant of chess.
When I had family ask what, like, when I'd say, hey, I do a gaming podcast, they'd be like, oh, what game is it? And they'd ask me to describe League. I would tell them that it's basically a 10-person chess match, five people against another 5 people, and everybody has their own chess piece that does something different.
I describe it as like a combination of chess and basketball. which there's
a character who dunks.
Yeah, no, it totally screws with people's head. But once you actually get into the description of it, like the macro kind of concepts and everything, not the actual play of basketball, but like the strategies that they use, zoning, cutting people off, being where you're not expected, like a lot of different things. It starts to click for people along those ways. But it's I mean, just I've watched a lot of basketball this year, and I'm kind of surprised by the number of similarities between that game and League of Legends.
They asked me to tell them to mind their own fucking business and shut the hell up.
Wow, that got aggressive.
Your family doesn't like you.
That's true. That's actually why your family doesn't like you. It's because you approach them with that
with that surly attitude.
That's not okay, Adam. I feel like we've come down to something important here.
I'm still waiting for the day 9 of League of Legends. Do you guys remember that when League was fresh and young? Everybody was
Adam, real quick, can you stop shaking your camera, whatever you're doing, because it is bouncing up and down, and it is real annoying.
The best part there was everything was moving except for his hair for half a second. That was the best part.
My monitor totally just fell down as I did that.
How much hair gel are you using?
Look at this. Look how sad this monitor is right now. That's a sad monitor. Do you see that? Look how sad it is.
Why is it sad?
The listeners.
Yeah.
Look
Look at how sad this podcast is.
it can move
oh,
up.
wait, you guys are all listening.
And now it falls. See?
Oh, okay. There, that. Okay. All right.
It's a sad little. It's a sad little
Yeah.
monitor. That's gonna bother me now. I can't read the document anymore.
Cool. So what were you saying?
I was just pointing out that there is no day night of League of Legends, and there can't be because of the reasons that we pointed out previously. I remember that was the big thing that when League first was getting big and professional, people were like, "Well, we need the day night of League of Legends, the guy who knows everything and can tell us when is that guy gonna come up." And then there has never been a day 9 of League of Legends because there can never be another day 9. The game just doesn't lend itself to being it doesn't lend itself to that like StarCraft.
Well,
He was that unique.
Go ahead, Dom.
He was that unique blend of super knowledgeable and super personable and friendly. I mean, like you would have guys like Monty who know all kinds of stuff and everything, but Monty was always right. There was no room for negotiation, and he didn't care about people liking him or not.
Right.
And that is certainly an appealing personality type and everything, but that doesn't fill the day 9 niche.
Not to here's another part of it now, at least at this current point. There are more champions in League than I think there are units, like actual individual units in StarCraft now. I
would hope so, because there'd be like 40 plus per race, which is already a lot. It's crazy.
So I mean, but that's like each champion has so many little niche things that they can do on their own too. Like that's a whole lot of game knowledge to know, rather than just knowing like uniqueness between 3 different races in a separate game.
So not only that, but
go ahead.
Last thing on the StarCraft is that StarCraft stays kind of stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Marine and the Zergling and the Zealot still do what they did when StarCraft 2 came out initially, but full characters that were released when League came out, like had full reworks, and some of them are totally different. Like Scion is a good example. The game changes far too frequently for there ever to be like one person who's like, "Don't worry, guys, I'm on top of everything in all 5 roles." Like it just can't happen in a game as big as League.
I mean, shit, we've been doing this podcast forever, and I would say each of us have our own, strengths in how we play the game and what we look at and all that stuff. But none of us know everything. There's just too much to know.
Speak for yourself, Dom. Or Sean. See, I don't even know your fucking
Wow,
name.
you don't even know who's on this podcast.
Yeah, you're useless to me. So you're
He took off his glasses.
You're extremely useful because you're just exemplifying my point.
Right. So I'm going to answer Kurth Leet's questions here instead of answering what else in the document, because he said he emailed us. We never answered him, and I don't remember seeing these questions come in. So I'm going to quickly bring these up right now. First questions: are there AD supports besides Ashe and MF that I can play when his ADC gets pick banned and he comfort picks a mage bot? Now, AD supports besides Ashe and MF.
If you shouldn't be playing either.
Do I read this question correctly? I'm just going to assume that I didn't, and you would like to clarify it in the chat, because that doesn't sound like you should be playing either of those in the support role. MF support is too nuanced and hard to play against.
She's good into one matchup, and even that's increasingly or decreasingly true, I should say.
Not to mention picking champions like that, picking something that's not only a non-traditional support, but like non-traditional support, and it seems like you're fucking actively trolling people, tilts your teammates so hard. Whether you like are honestly trying to just be like, nah, man, I want to play least support all the time.
I don't understand why so many people move to the support role and think they're going to revolutionize it by playing Shaco support all of a sudden. That hasn't been explored by higher MMR players and everything, and isn't successful for a lot of different reasons. In low MMR, yes, you can cheese your way to a lot of different victories playing, really weird stuff. But at a certain point, you're going to run into players who know how to deal with that shit, and then you're the one who's screwed because you've been relying on your surprise pick and not actually knowing how to play the role.
If it's worked extremely well in 2 games and it's fallen flat in 8 games,
quit playing it.
Yeah, stop.
Well, there's more background to this. My friend and I are both in bronze, but he tries to be a Phil main. And I think and he has a very limited champ pool. I think that is I think your problem here is you guys are trying to band-aid something, and you're trying to force your will onto the game, and instead of trying to learn how the game is actually played, you want to play it the way you want to play it, which more power
which is
to
fine.
you.
That's fine.
Right.
So I think we might have misread this a little bit, because I think what we're thinking is you're playing Ash for Misfortune as a support player.
He is.
Which is fair,
main.
But what I think they're saying is his friend has a specific AD carry that they can play, and when that gets picked or banned, they switch over to a mage instead as their bot laner that then I guess still takes CS. And if your concern is that your bot lane has to have, if they're playing the mage who takes CS, if you have to play an AD carry to be in that lane, if you're not taking CS, there's not really a point. Like, you might say, okay, I can do something with that Ashe support with an engage, but you could do just as well playing with that Ziggs. Well, I guess Ziggs has kind of become a little AD carry, but like a brand who's saying, I'm taking the CS. You can play something that also supports that and plays more engage or poke or something, as opposed to saying, I have to provide physical damage, but I'm getting no gold, so I'm not really going to pump out physical damage in the most item heavy role possible. So if that's the case, if that is the scenario, is that you are supporting a friend who's playing an off role as the AD carry in the terms of I take CS in bot lane and I'm supporting them, you don't need to play an AD carry champion to do that, because it is going to be incredibly ineffective.
Yeah, that's where I was. That was the exact point I was going to get to, Serial, after this, because I was going to tell you, Kurth, is that if you would like some more clarification on this, please go ahead and email me. Again, feedback@trinityforcepodcast.com. I swear to God, I'll find it. If we didn't see it, it's because it went to spam. I just recently realized that a bunch of emails are going to spam, and I hadn't been catching them. So I apologize if you've emailed me. If you've emailed me within the last month, email me again, and I will get it back to you. But yeah, just to answer, to just piggyback and probably parrot Serial, is that I think there is a huge misconception with low elo players, is that they have to try to fill a role. We have a mage top lane, we have a mage mid lane, we have a mage jungle, and now I have to pick some kind of AD as support to do damage, but you don't have any income, so you can't do the damage. Like, that's just, it's such a bad mentality to be in, that you should be propping up what your team does well rather than trying to fill gaps. And that goes back to the original conversation
this comes full circle. Right.
So email me if you have a question like this, like Kurth did when in the Twitch chat. If you have a clarification, or if you think something. I had somebody. I'm sorry, listener. I'm going to have to call you out, but he said something like such and such is being changed. Does this mean tank supports are going to be back? And I kind of went Guardian Angel. He said, since Guardian Angel is going to be good, does that mean tank supports come back? And I kind of went, it doesn't work that way. Just because Guardian Angel is good doesn't mean tank supports are good, because tank supports don't have to babysit the person with Guardian Angel. If anything, it means the exact opposite, because it means you don't need to be babysat because you have Guardian Angel now. So, like, anything, just email us and we'll get it to you. So we'll get you an answer one way or the other. And listener, I can't remember your name. I apologize. I'm just throwing you under the bus, but I'm not mentioning your name. So let's be friends still. We can hug this out, I swear.
There's no bad questions. If you're willing to, I don't want to say debase yourself to ask us a question, because we try to be helpful. We make this podcast to help people. So asking us a question is actively asking us to do something we like doing. So please do. There aren't, even if it is a question that might seem obvious to us, it's not obvious. It's not obvious to everybody. We don't know everything, as we just admitted. And hopefully that'll help. Us helping people also helps us grow as podcasters, helpers, and just kind of knowing the game.
Right. I think we're going to leave it at that. My dog is going nuts and has been going nuts in the background. And I'll answer any of your questions you got. So, yeah, send those guys in. Todd, I'm glad you could join us again. Your voice is very welcome on this show.
I'm back.
Fuck
back, baby.
I like to hear that. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Trinity Force podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode and all episodes that we send out. Serial Box is going to send you a couple Champion Select episodes this month at some point in time, whenever he stops being hungover. We'll figure that out.
Well, that, and whenever people stop having exams. Because everyone that we've messaged has been like, want to know with exams. I'm like, all right, finish quick. Good luck.
Right. I'll find some more people. I just found another guy. But then again, I found another guy. I found a Vel'Koz main. And then I started reading his Twitter, and he's kind of toxic. So I don't know if I want to talk to him specifically. We'll see. He's calling Diamond 1 people scrubs and shit. It's kind of funny. So
you didn't listen to the Akali podcast then?
No,
because I would argue that is an okay scenario for me to be jumping into.
Okay, fair enough, guys. That's it. That's the episode. We will see you all next week. Have a good one.